Hi everyone. Here with me today on Our Africa is Dr. Evelyn Asiedu. Dr. Evelyn Asiedu is a first generation Canadian of African descent. Her parents relocated to Canada from Ghana in the late 80s. Evelyn is a native of Brampton, Ontario. She moved to Edmonton for a doctoral program and is now currently doing a postdoc. She's also the executive producer of The Good and the Bad of Black Rat. I met Evelyn through the article she published in the Mcleans magazine. In the article titled Canadian Universities Must Collect Race-Based Data, she identified many struggles Black students face here in Canada. Thank you for joining me today, Evelyn. I'm so excited to have you. So tell us about yourself and your family heritage.
I am a first generation Canadian. And To answer the second question first, my parents came from Ghana in the late 1980s. My mom is from an area called Kumasi, and my dad's from a smaller village, Kumu, and they were married in the 80s, I believe, before my eldest sister was born. Who am I? I mean, I'm a lot of things, I guess. Right now, I'm working as a postdoctoral researcher for Environment and Climate Change Canada. And my journey has been kind of interesting through science. I mean, I was always encouraged by my parents to get an education, as you know, many African parents want for their kids, get a good education, be the best, be the brightest. And so I did my undergrad in chemistry at Western University, and then moved to Edmonton, Alberta to do my PhD. And so that was also an interesting, interesting several years. And I completed my PhD in last October, 2020, and I started my postdoc in January. So I'm a lot of things. I mean, I'm a scientist, but I also um, get my energy from connecting with people. I'm well connected to Black students now through the Black Graduate Students Association at the University of Alberta, and I really admire the work that they do. So I would consider them to be, true activists on campus. And I have tried in the last year to work with them to get changes made for students at the University of Alberta. Um, I'm also a hiker and I'm into sports and the outdoors. Um, and a sister. I have two sisters and two nieces. So I'm both a daughter, sister, aunt, friend, scientist, and in a way, an activist in my own right.
Yes, how wonderful and quite impressive what you do.
Thank you.
So, your parents relocated to Canada from Ghana in the 80s.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, parents would tell their children the reasons why they relocated. Like my son can recite mine quite easily.
Yeah.
And he would often end the story for me when I start because he's heard it over and over again.
Mhm.
So I left Nigeria because it was unsafe and I had terrible encounters with armed bandits.
Mm.
And so I wanted to live in a relatively safe country. So do you by any chance know why your parents left Ghana in the
Yeah.
80s?
Sure. I mean, it's funny because when we were growing up, the ostensible reason was because they wanted a better life for us. Like that's always the reason. We wanted a better life for you. We wanted you to be able to get a good education, get a good job, and um, just be in a what's wealthier country. I guess is the reason they always told us. Um, but over time, I've learned that they um, worked a number of jobs in all over uh, Africa. Actually, they were both teachers at one point in Ghana, but then they lived in Libya and I think another country for a while, teaching and trying to make money for their own families, and of course experienced racism there. In a country like Libya, I had no idea until very recently that they would have people, children throwing stones at them, people with slurs, things like this. And I did this honestly really recently. They opened up to me about this, and they love their country, they love Ghana, and I have this picture of what Ghana is to them. And so as much as they love their country, they moved to Canada for us, to give us a better life. And um, at the time, I think there was a military rule. J.K. Rawlings, John Jerry Rawlings. Sorry, I was saying the wrong thing. Yeah, Rawlings. I know I'm saying J.K. Rowling like Harry Potter. Getting confused so bad. Rawlings was had a military rule in Ghana, and many people were leaving um, leaving the country during that time. So there's a little bit of politics in there. So it's not just economics. There's a little bit of political unrest at the time. Of course, now Ghana's fairly stable, but a number of reasons which all have led to um, me having the life that I have now. So a lot of sacrifices that they made for us to be able to live here, for sure.
Thanks for sharing that. So my next question is layered, and you are a first generation African Canadian, right? So have you ever visited Ghana, and what were your impressions?
So I have only visited Ghana once, which is really sad.
Once. Oh.
I know, which is really sad. Is it was so long ago. It was when I was 8, so that's 1998. And I went with my mom and my younger sister. Was it 1998? Yes, it was 1998, because at that time my eldest sister had just moved, or not so long ago moved to Canada, because she was born in Ghana, lived in Ghana till she was 10, and then moved here, and that was because of some paperwork and some DNA testing and stress from my parents, I'm sure. But when I went to visit Ghana, I just went with my younger sister and my mom, and I remember it being very warm, very bright. But of course, my memories are fading now. Like, I met lots of family. I played a lot. I understand most of the language. The native language is Tree, but I don't speak, unfortunately. So there's that language barrier. But with my cousins, it was, just we're just playing as kids, and there was never really much of an issue there. I was able to meet my father's mom, who I think must have been over 100 at the time, and she was so happy to see us. I definitely remember that, and she passed away probably now about in the year 2000 or so. So passed away a few years after that, I'm guessing. Was that accurate? But I was lucky enough to meet her, is the point. And my maternal grandmother as well. So I just have kind of warm memories, not just of the environment, but of the people. We had planned, actually, we booked tickets to go as a family for December of 2020, but of course, COVID
COVID.
COVID foiled all of our plans. So now we're trying to find a way that we can reschedule. My dad goes back every year, and my mom goes back every 2 to 3 years. And so my dad is making it very a priority, high priority, that we all go as a family, and they have a house there for us, and you have to know where you're from. You have to know who is your family, and you always have a place to come back to, is what they want us to know. And so hopefully when we speak another time, I'll be able to tell you that yes, I've gone, and yes, I have more vivid and accurate memories.
So I'm glad your parents are invested and connected to Africa. So collection of race-based data is a subject I feel so strongly about. And then you published an article in Mcleans, and that generated a lot of interest. The article was titled, Canadian Universities Must Collect Race-Based Data. And in that article, you identified many struggles Black students face in graduate school. You spoke on behalf of many of us, Evelyn. Well done. I was so proud, so impressed reading that article. So what prompted you to write that article?
Thank you for your question and for all of your kind comments. It is very humbling, and I feel honored that people like you, women like you, who I look up to, are proud of me. And
Thank you.
yeah, I do. I didn't write the article for that reason. What prompted it was after the killing of George Floyd, um, there was a lot of social unrest, not only in the States we were seeing on the TV, but also here in Canada. Um, there was even protests here in Edmonton, right, and where we are living, and so it felt like a very tense and important moment in history. And I was writing my thesis at the time, and I was trying very hard to just ignore everything and just keep my head down and get it done, because my PhD was a very stressful, as it is for anybody. Grad school is very stressful. My PhD was a very stressful and turbulent time. And when that happened, I could no longer pretend that nothing else mattered. I could no longer ignore everything that I was feeling, especially because I had a couple of friends reach out to me to ask, how are you? How are you doing? Are you okay? Um, and the initial reaction is to say, thank you for thinking about me. I'm okay, and kind of just brush it off and keep going and pretending that you're fine. But the more and more I thought about it, I realized that there was people who I was very close with who didn't ask me if I was okay, and that more than anything, that I didn't have uh, a close community of Black peers to whom I could vent or cry or console. It was just me in my room trying to deal with my feelings. And so the reason why I wrote it was to express to my friends and to people who I know care about me but didn't reach out to tell them how I was feeling. And I have, in many instances throughout my academics, been the only Black person in the room, the only Black person in chemistry, the only Black person in the
Yes.
faculty, right? And that's an experience that you have had, I'm sure,
Yes.
Miriam,
Oh, yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so, at that point, it was over 6 years in this PhD. I've always been, my closest friends are white females, and one is a Pakistani female. And so, race doesn't necessarily always come up, and it hadn't really. It's just bits and pieces. It came up, but nothing more like it's almost like a topic that I avoided. For them, maybe they didn't think about it. For me, I avoided it. And so at this point, it was like this, I can't avoid this anymore. I need to tell my friends how I feel, not only how I feel in this moment, but how I have felt all of these years as a Black Canadian, as a Black Canadian scientist, as a Black Canadian academic, or just as a Black academic on the whole. Because realistically, the things I was describing, the isolation, the microaggressions, the expectation and burden of having to be better than anyone else because you are looked upon to be worse than anyone else. I had to express that in a way to let people know that this is not necessarily a moment. Like for people, they're seeing Black people are hurt because Black men are dying in America, but that wasn't it. The most obvious manifestation you can see of racism is is somebody losing their life, but that's where the term systemic comes from, because it's not just people dying, it's people not having access to education, people not having access to opportunities because of intentional efforts to limit a certain people because of how they look. And so it's a very long-winded answer, but I
Oh,
wrote it to
quite necessary. Yes.
I wrote it to describe that, this is not just a moment in time. This is my experience, as privileged as I am, is one that many people experience, and it is a common experience for Black people, and so I know I have, um as I said, the privilege because of the sacrifices my parents have made, and um I happen to be good at school and things like that. I know there's a lot of things I have to be thankful for, but notwithstanding all of those things, I still struggle. And I know there's people who are in higher power and have gone through a lot more in their academics and are a lot more successful, and they have also had the same instances. So I wrote it to talk about my experience and to remove, I guess, kind of not remove, but to reframe what racism looks like in every day. So it's not necessarily it's police carding people. It's not being followed around the store. It is those things, but it's also when people don't listen to you in a room, or people ask you where you're from, or people assume that you don't know because of the color of your skin. So that's the reason why I wrote the articles, because I wanted to inform my friends about how I was feeling. And I shared it with a friend who happened to be a journalist. And she's like, this is really well written. You should try and publish it. And I had no idea how to do that. I had never written anything for anyone official or any, publication. And so she, and this is a white friend of mine, she took my hand and walked me through the process of, pitching it to different organizations and waiting for a reply. And eventually it ended up in Mcleans, which I think had an impact because of the academic framing of it, because Mcleans is a magazine which focuses on scholarship in Canada. So that's what led me to you. That's what
I
led me.
know. That was how I met you.
Exactly.
Through the article. We've
Yeah,
never even met
I
in
know.
person.
I
Yeah.
know. Because
Through
of
the
COVID.
article.
Yes, exactly. That's how I met you. And it's funny because as a result, I have come in contact with so many beautiful and amazing Black academics from all over within University of Alberta, but all over Canada. And it was reaffirming, sad in a way, but reaffirming to know that it's not just me, right? It's not just me. And that was the point of why I had said in the article that race-based data needs to be collected, because it is not just me. you know I have a feeling from things that I've read, and I did a little bit of research to pull it together, but this is stuff like that, has been studied, that this racism is an issue and has been an issue, and we don't talk about it as Canadians. And if we don't collect the information, then it just seems to be anecdotal. So my even the piece I wrote it's a story. In a way, it's a story of a person, one person. But if we don't have the information, then how do we know that it's an isolated incident? And how do we tell ourselves that racism does not exist in Canada? Like, it's just, yeah.
April of this year, CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, declared racism as a threat to public health. So in that context, what are some of your personal experiences?
That is a very interesting question.
A heavy question.
It's a heavy
Most
question.
people pause and
Yeah, exactly. Like to sit and
because it
reflect
brings
on.
up emotions, right? Different emotions. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It brings up emotions that we're often trying to avoid. Like, we all have these experiences, which we find ways to push out of our head. And so just to pause and think about it it's hard, it's painful. I mean, I've had a number of experiences, but one that
I'm sure.
yeah, as we all have. One that is random, but one that comes to mind was around the time of my defense, just before my defense in it would have been last summer or fall. I ride my bike. I don't have a vehicle here, so I ride my bike all around the city. And I was riding my bike from the north side of the river to the south side of the river. So here in Edmonton, we have a river that kind of, for the most part, divides the city into north and south. And I think, coming back from campus, which is on the south side of the river. I was going home, which is on the north side of the river. So anyways, there's a bridge that connects the two. And I was on that bridge. And as I was passing someone, they put their arm out and they hit me as I was passing them. And I stopped and turned around, and it was this gentleman, and he was yelling at me, "You were going too fast. There's no reason you should be going that fast." And he was like pointing at me aggressively. And in that moment, I had to stop and think, do I confront him? Do I try and record him? Do I ask for help? Like, what do I do? And I was scheduled to tutor a student virtually. So after pausing for about a minute or two, I just ended up riding. On my way home, I stopped at the police station to say, like, this happened to me. What was I supposed to do? And they're like, in these instances, usually we don't find the person. If it happens to you again, you can record them and whatnot. And I was very upset. Like I was very upset. And that was because I, first of all, don't think I was going that fast. Second of all, I knew there were people who were passing me on the way to the bridge, so they were faster.
So you were singled out.
The way I think about it, I'm like, why me?
Yeah.
What made this person feel the right to stop?
Mm-hmm.
Because if this person was doing it to everyone else, then
exactly
there would be some kind of fight, some kind of commotion. But there was something in him that thought that I was the person that he could put his hands on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it was very, very, very frustrating, very disturbing. But that's just like one example of, the things that happen to you as a Black person in Edmonton.
I'm sorry that happened to you. But that's the life.
It's the life. It's a day in the life, right?
I know. But then that's why I'm glad you're the executive producer of The Good and the Bad of Black Grad. Mm-hmm. So tell us about that. I'm really excited. The first time I saw it, I was so excited. Like, I am glad she's doing this. Thank you so much. Tell us about that and your vision.
Sure. So The Good and the Bad and the Black Grad is a webinar series, which I started after I had given as part of a panel, for the Canadian Association of Graduate Studies. It was in November, and the panel had two other guests whose names I'm forgetting, but I can provide that later. And the title was The Truth of Oppression in Graduate School, something like that. Black students talking about oppression in graduate school. And it was a very candid discussion. And there was a high amount of attendance, and the sponsoring agency, or the hosting agency, CAGS, the Canadian Association of Graduate Studies, said, if you have any ideas, let us know. And so I thought about it. I reached out to my graduate peers and asked them what they thought about this idea. If I have a series talking about the issues we face, and I actually held a kind of brainstorming session to talk to them about if I did this, what topics do you think would be interesting? What do people need to hear? And finally, I put together a proposal and I submitted it to CAGS, and they approved it. And so my vision for the webinar series is such that by listening to the stories of Black graduate students, that it can, at the very least, at the very minimum, help a different or another Black graduate student who is going through this experience. Maybe will inspire and I hope support future Black graduate students who might go through this. I also mean it as a space for allies and people who don't know how to support or don't know what it's like to sit in and listen. And I always say, it's an open space. Feel free to ask questions. We don't tolerate racist questions, but other than that, it's fairly open. It's meant to be a learning process. And finally, what I hope is that through the collection of stories and through the direct questioning of, what do these students think should change? What should universities do? That it provides like a list or a scaffold for administrators of universities, for leaders in universities to reflect and go back on out of the horse's mouth. Because again, like I said, when I wrote my article, it was a personal experience. It was my experience, but it was the experience of many. And I wanted to use this platform to highlight and uplift the voices of Black academics and demonstrate this is not a me problem. This is not about me. Like the webinar series is really not for me. It's for the betterment of Black people in Canada and the betterment of Canadians as a whole. Like we are a society, we live together, we need to learn to know each other and to really, at the end of it, love each other, I hope one day. And I know that that's almost a utopian dream, but I do hope that this series is helpful in getting us closer to understanding each other and helping to get Black academics closer to where they deserve to be, which is respected and acknowledged and seen as more than their skin. So that's kind of my vision for the series.
Do you have, that is professionally, do you have a Black mentor?
So at this moment, I I'm in the process of collecting my Black mentors, because that was part of the article, right? I felt so isolated because I didn't have um people in my life at the time. Not many. I had a couple of Black friends who were not even living in the city, honestly. But I didn't have that many people in my life who I could relate my experiences to, which was part of the challenge. And I am thankful for the mentors that I have had along the way. They've been, white men and white women. But now that I've started to create and cultivate this community of Black academics in my life, it's been really, really enriching. And so I just kind of I'm more able to reach out to people and ask questions and relate to them. And um, there is, as you know, the Black Faculty Collective at the University of Alberta, and there's a lot of interesting and amazing people who are working as part of that collective. So I'm not necessarily directly connected to any single one of those faculty members, but I have been getting to know them here and there. And um, yeah, the community is growing. The community is
Oh
growing,
yes.
you
Oh
know?
yes.
Yeah. And I'm part of also the Black Canadian Scientists Network, which is a professional organization, which, as the name implies, is an organization of Black scientists. And I definitely see that community growing. And I know that there are people there that I can go to with questions. And so I that 2020 was such a weird year, but I think if nothing else, it was a year of reflection and bringing people together. So,
Mhm.
I know where to go to find a mentor now, whereas beforehand, no clue. Right.
So
So
right about that.
yeah.
The Black community on some level is siloed. For example, my son is 20 years old. He's never had a Black teacher.
Right.
I find that really distressing.
Mhm.
I've only had one Black mentor, Dr. Cecil Foster, professionally um, in my career, and
Mhm.
I've been in Canada for 20 years. So that's telling. What I'm going to read is integral to my last question.
Okay.
So the statement is from CDC again, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Yeah.
So CDC states that racism, both interpersonal and structural, negatively affects the mental and physical health of millions of people, preventing them from attaining their highest level of health and consequently affecting the health of our nation. So there's a public health crisis, mental health crisis that is tied to racism.
Mhm.
So on that note, what do you do for self-care?
Ooh, self-care. Yes. Actually, I the last episode of the episode 3 of the webinar was last week, and we talked about mental health as well. And so it's just it's a topic which I'm glad that the Black community is talking about more now, because part of the issue is that it has been stigmatized within the Black community. And I think that's also part of the structure of racism, because of all of the challenges we face, we are also um, meant to feel that we have to be strong. You have to be strong to endure anything. But of course, at the end of the day, we're humans. We are multifaceted, and we have to take care of ourselves. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Um, and in terms of what I do for self care, I realize I need to be connected to people. Like I often will call my sisters. I'm very close with my sisters, even though they're both in Ontario. We speak at length. Like I just got off a call with them for 90 minutes. I don't even know what we talked about, just checking in with them and making sure they know where I'm at. I call my mom frequently. And I try to see my friends. I mean, with COVID, it's hard, but being close to people who see you and remind you of who you are is helpful. Um, I go to the gym. I mean, I can't now. There's a lot of that's part of why it's challenging with COVID. A lot of our coping mechanisms have been kind of put on hold. So I was going to the gym this past winter. I couldn't, so I was going for runs outside, and I've been using stairs more recently. And I have weights at home now, so try and use physical exercise to get out of my own head. And last year was the first year I started to try to meditate, which is very hard for me because my head is always in 1 million places at a time. Um, my mom always says, you have to pray, you have to pray. She sometimes questions like, I don't know if you pray anymore, but I do. It doesn't look the same. It doesn't look
That's
the
like
same.
me and my son.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, I don't know if you pray anymore, but you should always be praying. And I'm like, I know. And it doesn't look the same as, what it looked like when I was going to church with her as a kid and things
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah.
it's in many ways the same. It serves the same purpose as meditation. So I do both. And and now and then I can watch some TV. Now that I'm in my postdoc and I have a little bit more free time, TV has been a way to escape and get out of my head. So yeah, I do that as well. So trying to do different things and learning different ways to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, and also talking about it, like talking about the fact that sometimes I'm not okay, and I'm
Exactly.
glad. Thank you for asking that question, because I think it's important that we as Black people recognize that it's okay to not be okay.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yes. You have a rich life, rich story, and I'm so happy for you.
Oh.
I know you do great things. And so, what were some of your coping mechanisms in grad school? I
Um,
had mine. Mine is quite simple. I just go back home. I spend time with my son. My son was like,
Aw.
it was around 5 or 6 years
Yeah,
old
so
then. So
cute.
I'll just spend time with him. We'll read children's book and sing and dance and pray, and then I put him to bed. Those moments are very special for me. No matter what was going on, I look forward
To that
to do
time.
that with my son.
It's
Yeah.
so adorable. Yeah, no, I don't have a son. I'm single. I'm still very single. I would I spend a lot of time with friends. I'm it's not good, but I'm somebody who, when I'm stressed, I don't eat much. Like, I know there's people who, they're stressed, they eat more. I'm a kind of the opposite. So I would use the gym. I would often go out with friends. We go to the pub when that was a thing that was allowed. Go to the pub and vent to each other. And I would try to make a trip to Toronto every year or so. And when I first started grad school, flying back and forth from Edmonton to Toronto was very expensive. But now it's towards the end, it became more moderate, so I can do that more frequently. But um, yeah, it's just, people have various ways of coping. And um, yeah, I was able to go through the majority of my graduate school without, um, having to do anything too serious. So just really trying to get support in whatever ways that I can. And I think I'm getting better now. I'm out of grad school now, so that helped a lot. But grad school is so hard. It's more than just what you're doing in the research. It's a lot, but I did it.